Please call the roll.
Councilmember Leyva. Councilmember Greer.
Here.
Councilmember Dickinson.
Here.
Councilmember Hepperly.
Here.
Councilmember Schumacher is not here. Vice Mayor Hunt.
Here.
Mayor Palguda.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thanks, ma'am. First item up, Schneider Electric update. Welcome, guys.
I don't want to take too much time with this because I want Brandon to have the time to really be able to share some important information with you about the energy audit. It was June 2nd, exactly 9 months ago, that we presented the first time for this audit. And at that point, it was what could be, what we might be able to find. We're at 90% now, and I think we have some more solid information, and I think it has some exciting results from it. So I'm going to turn it over to Brandon, and he'll take it from here.
Thanks, Bill.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Mayor Palguda, council members, appreciate the opportunity to be here again, sharing an update with you guys. I know most of you have seen me before. I know there's a few new council members. Brandon Woodward with Schneider Electric. And as Bill mentioned, we've been working for the better part of 9 months on what we're going to share with you today. So this is kind of a final outcome of everything we've been working closely with town staff on to get to today. And as I'm going through this, please don't hesitate to ask questions. I'm going to try and give as high level of an overview as possible, while also giving some background for the new council members on why we're looking at some of these things. So as a very quick recap, the town leadership early last year put out a solicitation looking for a partner to do some of this work, interviewed a handful of companies, selected Schneider Electric as a partner to develop this project with the following goals that we're working on. The top one is looking for savings, whether that be energy savings, water savings, cost savings. How can we help the town to find as much savings as possible? Also looking at modernizing your existing infrastructure to the town's detriment. You've done a really good job of limping systems along over the years and getting as much life out of this equipment as possible. But Schneider has helped to look at those things and figure out where can we reinvest some of that money, some of that savings to get you guys up to speed, modernize infrastructure. Also, how can we help the staff? You've got a limited number of staff. If we can help improve their time, lower maintenance and operation costs, that's just as important as the energy savings component. And then lastly, Town Council's strategic plan and 2035 general plan. You've got a lot of content in there surrounding a lot of the stuff that we're looking at with smart cities and energy efficiency, financial, fiscal responsibility. So tying everything we're doing back into those original goals. And so, as I mentioned, over the last 9 months, Schneider Electric has been working closely with town staff to identify a big bucket of needs and opportunities. These are things that are going to either have a really good payback, a cost savings payback, or items that, hey, we've got old air conditioning units, might not have the best payback, but it's an immediate need that has to happen. And so for everything we found, this is the big bucket of content that we found. I've put it into 4 different categories: lighting and electrical, everything from town-wide LED replacement to actually adding new LED sports floodlighting at some of your fields to increase sports tourism. HVAC and building automation, that's where the bulk of the conversation is going to be tonight. It's the most critical need currently. Smart city modernization, some of the creative things we're looking at there, and then the catch-all for additional solutions, just other areas where we saw need or savings opportunities. So this is the holistic view of kind of everything we found. And to give you a look at what that looks like, about $24 million worth of needs. That's how it breaks out there in the different categories, which working with town staff, that's a big chunk to bite off, $24 million. But the good news is about $39 million worth of life cycle savings to this. So everything we're looking at has cost savings and pays for itself. So instead of taking off that one big chunk, we talked about phasing this over multiple budget years. And so we've co-authored the scope you're going to see next is our phase 1 scope of work, which represents the most critical infrastructure. And some of it has fantastic payback. The other is just, this is a big need. And you saw some of that when we were here in December talking about the HVAC equipment. So it's kind of hard to see up here, but the bold scope of work, that's what we're recommending for this phase 1 project. Like I said, a lot of that is in the HVAC, building automation category, and I'm going to spend just a few minutes on each one of these, give you a real high-level look at what that scope looks like. If you've got any questions, feel free to stop me as I'm going through. So this will look very familiar for most of you. For the new council members, we presented some of this information in December. The short story is your civic center and your event center have HVAC equipment that is on borrowed time. And these are not just units that you go get at Home Depot. For example, your house probably has a 4 or 5 ton unit. Civic Center has 50 ton units, so they're 10 times larger than that. And then the Event Center has 130 ton units, I believe, 130 ton units. These are very large, very complex units that are custom built by Trane, in this case, or the manufacturer. And 2 of your least favorite words lately are supply chain issues and lead time. And this is a huge factor with these, in that to custom build these HVAC units, specifically for the Event Center, it's almost a year lead time. So this is why we presented this back in December to get council's approval on kind of a pre-approval to order this equipment, knowing that this project was coming. And by doing that, we were able to jumpstart that, get that equipment ordered, shave off 3 to 4 months in getting that installed, because the situation is dire at both the Event Center and Civic Center for maintaining heat and cooling in those areas. If those units goes down, you've got some things to figure out. So fingers crossed on that. That equipment has been ordered, shaved off a few months on that. And that's on the replacement side. You also have a lot of other mechanical HVAC equipment that still has lots of useful life in it. What we're doing is replacing the few that you saw, and then also repairing and upgrading a lot of the existing equipment that you have. And so looking at the pictures there to the right, that top one is at the police center, and it's hard to tell, but what you're looking at is the most severe hail damage I've seen in 13 years of walking on roofs. That should be all black, and every little tiny nick in there is a piece of hail that has hit that. And these fins are there. This is how it breathes. This is how this unit breathes. So with those all being closed, these units are breathing through a straw, essentially, to try and provide heating and cooling for your facilities. This was common on just about every one of your units. So we're going into none of the units that have less than 5 years life. Anything that's going to be replaced in the next 5 years, we're not going to go in and put a bunch of money into. But on all the units that we can get more than 5 years out of, we're going through and essentially doing a tune-up, going through, combing those fins, cleaning coils, doing a few other upgrades to prolong the lifespan of all of that equipment. And then there's a long list there of additional comfort solutions we're installing, indoor air quality improvements at Library and Civic Center, and a few other pieces we're doing there. Any questions on the HVAC? Yeah, go ahead.
How are the other 2 units at the Event Center? I know that.
Not good. Okay, so so you've got 4 units at the Event Center. 2 of them are not functioning, have not been functioning. So what that means is that you've got this largest space in town that instead of having the 4 units to cool that, it's being cooled on 2 units. So if you've got an event on Saturday, they are pre-cooling that starting on Wednesday to get it to the temperature. Incredibly inefficient, and you're putting a huge load. You're putting double the load on those 2 remaining units. So the units that we're replacing are the ones that are not functioning. These are not cheap units, so we had a lot of conversation around replacing all 4 of them, and we're replacing just the 2 that are not functioning currently, and those will be the primary units, with the ones that are limping along, using those as the backup units after that. And then that's something that we're talking about getting in future budget cycles, is replacing those other 2 large units. Yeah, great question.
Brandon, did they advise how long 2 just were inoperable?
I don't have the answer to that. Josh, Bill, any idea how long they've been running that way? It's been a while.
Years.
Yeah. Which, and like I started, that's to the detriment of the town. Your staff has done a really good job of getting this stuff lasting longer than its life cycle. But you're at a point now where if those 2 that are running do go down, you're canceling events at the Event Center for a while. You've got some challenges.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brandon, I think you told us that they were like life cycle and they were on their 20-year or something like that last December. So those two that are surviving are 20 years into the 50-year life?
They are, yeah. And so I'm not going to paint a rosy picture on the remaining units. They will absolutely be on a soon, hopefully future budget cycle to be replaced, but they've gotten more life out of them than even we project. We typically look at that 14 to 15 year range. At planning to, we're starting to replace those. They're at about 20 years for the event center and civic center. You're at, I think, over 25 years, right at about 25 years on those units. So you've gotten your money's worth out of them, and now you're crossing fingers on borrowed time.
And you talked about shaving 3 months off of the new units by summer.
They will not. And so this is, let me rephrase that. The Civic Center units, we are targeting right around that summer window. The event center units, they are, our first quote was in 2024. So we've been flexing a little bit of muscle on train, getting that up. Now we're looking towards the late third, early fourth quarter of this year, getting those in. So probably October-ish range. Which is, it's not ideal. We get that, but that's a large reason why we brought this forward in December was let's shave off 3 or 4 months while we can to get those. But the latest update we got from Train, so how that works is we've got all the designs in, it's ordered, and you are now in a queue with 20,000 other people waiting for this entirely custom unit to be built by Train in their factory and then delivered here on a flatbed. So we are doing what we can to expedite that, but there's those famous words, supply chain, that everyone's running into, and lead times are a challenge.
Thin piece of equipment that you're going to repair and add 5 years to. That's something when you give us our final report that we're going to add to our CIP. It costs and when we have to plan for a new one.
Partially. And so the coils, I'm sorry, the fins that we are combing and repairing, that's not necessarily going to add 5 years. We're just not touching much that's got, there's units we're recommending replacing in the next 5 years, and everything else we're saying, let's get as much life out of this as possible. So for those, we're fixing it, and then we're installing a factory hail guard to where you shouldn't have that issue in the future on that. Now those units, some of those will absolutely get 5, 10, 15 more years out of them. Some won't. It's tough to say on that. But, and I'm getting ahead of myself on this, we've got a solution that we're working on with the town it's called Capital Asset Planner that allows you, we're putting all of your mechanical equipment into a database that allows you to see it holistically and start planning for the age of this equipment, when it needs to be replaced, how much time and money is being spent on repairs so that we're getting you from reactive to proactive. And that's what that software is going to do, is help you to plan for to where you're not in the same situation with the event center and the civic center that you are now. You're not faced with that a few years down the road. We're going to help get caught up and be proactive. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions?
All of this is bearing on whether we have good weather conditions and other conditions that are unforeseen as far as mechanical failure and anything else that might happen. So in essence, we probably should be prepared ahead of time for whatever may occur you're saying we're reaching for 5 years for this to extend the lifespan on these units. So we need to anticipate rather than and be at the forefront rather than be behind it if some other problems were to occur. So in that instance, do you have anything or any ideas as to how to mitigate that?
A couple things, and this is an idea that Josh had that's actually going to be really effective for your civic center specifically is we're installing redundant ductwork to where the units there, if you lose the units there, which is likely, there's some challenges they're up against currently, limping those along. The first thing we're doing when we get on site is installing a redundant ductwork to where if you do lose 1, 2 of those units, you can redirect the existing into those floors. So that gives you, and that helps with a lot of other things, but that's an instant peace of mind at that to where, all right, when you're waiting the other 4 or 5 months for those units to get there, you've got a plan B. So event center and civic center are, yeah, thumbs up to Josh. The event center and civic center are most challenging because of the size and complexity of those units. Areas like the unit that I'm showing here at the police and a lot of your other facilities, those are much smaller individual units. Those ones don't have a 6-month, 8-month, 12-month lead time to where you can, and not that you're going to get it from Home Depot, but that unit, for example, is only controlling a small portion of one space, and you can get those fairly quickly. You can get parts to those fairly quickly. So it's not nearly as dire if one of those does go down. But you're absolutely right. These are conversations we're having with town leadership to figure out, all right, how do we get a Band-Aid on the immediate needs now, but then slowly but surely start planning for plan B and C moving forward.
These units here, are the parts available, or do you have to, reach out to cannibalize units other places and, retrieve them from other towns and cities to make something like this work?
Do you want to add to that? I mean, Josh is the one that's having to rob Peter to pay Paul to fix these things, but it's all over the map, would you say?
The only ones we have issues.
Bill told me he'd give me $5 if I can get him to stand up and get up here, so.
The ones at the PD, we can get those overnight. Most of the parts are all local, so we can go down to Phoenix, get those. Same with CASA, Senior Center, Boys and Girls Club is all new. It's just the Civic Center. Those ones are over 25 years old. So a lot of stuff we're getting off eBay. Yeah, that's
That's the
the
only
only
option.
place I can find some of the stuff.
And then one piece he didn't touch on is the refrigerant piece of this. That's a whole nother complex animal. Is you've got very old refrigerant in these old units that is now borderline illegal by the EPA, and so it's the cost per gallon for that has gone through the roof because it's been phased out. There's a lot of challenges there, but it's very much a shell game of trying to figure out where to get that equipment to limp it along.
Well, I know even for units for residences, I went through this a few years ago, and it was same scenario, same story. It was difficult to find parts, and it was just easier, the whole thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes the case. And I'll tell you what, that's one huge benefit of the solution we've been working on. And it's taken us a while to get here. Like I said, 9 months is we're really reframing the approach towards deferred maintenance with the town and getting from that reactive to proactive so that we can get ahead of this. And we're prepared for this. We're planning for this. We're budgeting for this to where instead of spending time putting Band-Aid ons, we're doing more than that. So we're getting there. Yeah.
Councilwoman?
The PD unit that we see here, is that a newer one that was put in when the remodel was done?
I don't know on that, but regardless of whether that's for the new addition or for the older part of the building, they look the same. They are absolutely hammered by hail.
Right, but it was done fairly recently, and so I'm just wondering why hail guards weren't a part of the original design. Because that's probably the newest HVAC unit that the town owns, I would imagine, since we have and so it seems like it's just disappointing that because you can tell by the edges it looks a lot nicer than the, like where the fins aren't damaged. It definitely looks newer, and so it's just it's nice to know that moving forward, not only are we replacing and repairing all of these things, but we're actually taking precautions to not get in this situation again.
Exactly, and you're right. In hindsight, absolutely, those should have been built with hail guards. That's not the norm.
Pictures right there are not on the expansion. Those aren't on the new building where the gym is and the training room.
But-
Those are on the other section.
But they're
I
still
thought the
back.
gym was part of the new.
Right, but these are not, those units are not part of the new expansion that we did 2 years ago.
Okay, so were any new HVAC units put in with the expansion?
Yes, and those ones have hail guards on them.
Okay, good. All right, good.
Now she knows better.
Not all of our units on the PD had hail guards, but all the new ones that we've been putting in, we've been putting hail guards on.
And do they have a warranty?
They have, what is it, like 5-year on compressor, and then that's pretty much it. Just a 5-year on your compressors.
Any other questions?
Moving on.
All right. So that's the largest piece. Largest, most critical piece is the HVAC. Tied to that is a building automation system. This will be a huge benefit to Josh and his team. So what you have currently with your roughly 100 AC units throughout the town is they are all, or the vast majority are controlled. I don't see one in here. Just a manual thermostat like you've got in your house. Challenge with that is you've got 100 of these that are turned way down, left on, they're on the weekend, incredibly inefficient for run times and a handful of other things. And you can see some of the old technology there in that bottom left picture. We're replacing that with a town-wide building automation system. You can see everything right from your phone, your computer. You get alerts when units go down. You can better manage and control set points and temperatures and schedules. Huge energy savings, huge maintenance time savings. And there's a handful of other pros and benefits this has, one of which is tightening in your refrigerators and freezers, putting alarms on those so that if you've got something goes down, a freezer goes down on Friday night, you don't come in on Monday to thousands of dollars of spoiled food. You're getting a text alert at a temperature drop. I could go on and on, but huge step forward in modernization. And I will say I do this with a lot of cities. I've yet to see a town or city as large as Prescott Valley that doesn't have a system like this. This is standard procedure for most facilities where you've got more than one building. Electrical infrastructure. This is another case at the Civic Center. You've just got old equipment, and it's at and probably past its useful life. Lead time on this is about a year. And so if this goes out, power goes out, you're not picking it up from Home Depot and you're powerless at Civic Center for a while. So this is one where it's not an issue until it's an issue, and then it's mission critical and you're work from home and other challenges for a while that comes in. So we're proactively replacing the electrical infrastructure there, not just like for like, but we're looking at future needs down the road. Will there be a need for electric vehicle infrastructure, for solar, for any number of other things, so that we're building it for what you need today and sizing it for what you'll need 10, 15, 20 years down the road, so you're not ripping this out in a few years for any major upgrades. And then the last one, and this is one of the most, I would say, critical. It's probably the smallest piece of the pie, but the town has had long-standing conversations about water management, and so that was a critical piece of this project. Was we've got to look for ways to save water. And so this one is, it's nothing super sexy or nothing that people will see much of, but replacing a lot of not replacing the fixtures or the actual units themselves, but upgrading some of those fixtures to efficient water savings devices that on just over about 500 sinks, toilets, urinals all across the town, which doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal. We're just replacing a lot of times the valves, the diaphragms in these to where they're not constantly running, constantly overusing water. The savings component of this, over 1 million gallons a year in projected water savings. So this is not just a few gallons here and there. This is just over 1 million gallons in projected water savings every year, which is hard to envision. So Katie did some rough math, and it's just about 50 residential swimming pools in water savings every single year. So as you're looking at your town water management plan, this is absolutely the town taking a proactive step to set the example for water management and water savings. And then last piece, this is kind of the catch-all. Won't spend much time on this, but working with Latoya on and Heidi on the marketing piece on how do we help get some of this information out to the community. We're looking at some some modernization logos with the town. There's a couple creative things we're helping with on that. It's a very small piece. The capital asset planner, I mentioned that earlier, getting the software and the tool you need to proactively manage your assets for the future. That's going to be a huge benefit for facilities team, but then also for Katie and her team as they start to budget and plan for the future years. And then this one is the hosted telecom system is critical, and you probably won't see much of this because you're not using one of these devices on a day-to-day basis, but every town staff member has a phone. This phone system was installed in 2007, which for perspective, the iPhone 1 came out in 2007. This is an old system, and just like Josh is buying parts on eBay, Casey is struggling to find parts and resources for their systems just the same, paying more and more every single year for maintenance, parts, labor. It's a nightmare. It doesn't have any of the bells and whistles. It's a big challenge. So you're looking at, to replace that system, almost $400,000. And that was kind of one of the things that the town was looking at. So we've had conversations with Casey and the team of, instead of replacing that with a system that's going to need to be replaced in a few years, looking at a hosted solution. So the way the hosted solution works is, instead of paying $500,000 for this phone system, they provide all new devices for the entire town, and you're essentially borrowing their devices and using their service, which fantastic. You've got that capital expense savings. The operating expense, it's less per month, about $1,000 less a month for the service and the devices than you're currently spending now. So this is a home run for the town to be able to upgrade your systems and save money and not have that huge capital expense. And then I can go on and on about the security features, E911 features. This is especially with work from home, the telecommunications piece that we've all experienced the last couple of years. This is going to be a huge benefit to the town. That's all I've got for scope. Any questions on that before I jump to the last piece? The important part. So as I mentioned, everything we're looking at has some sort of payback. Mechanical units, HVAC, up front does not have a very good payback, but critical infrastructure that you need to replace, whether it paid for itself or not. Still, all that considered, looking at first year savings of just over $500,000. And this is definitely not all utility savings. Some energy savings, water savings, a big maintenance and operation savings, capital cost avoidance, big rebate from APS, telecom. I mean, there are several components that come into this, but pretty significant savings year one, life cycle savings over the life of this project of just over $10 million. And the project price of all of this, everything we mentioned, comes in at about $6.8 million, and that includes the $1 million that council has already pre-approved in December. So that's the final price, final savings that we're looking at for this capital project. And then last piece, kind of where we've been, where we're headed. We've got obviously council study session tonight. We are working through the final details, final contracts with Ivan and Steven, working through those over the next week or two. And this should be back in front of council in 3 weeks for consideration and approval, followed by immediate construction kickoff and starting to implement some of these things.
Vice Mayor?
I have a question. So Brandon, go back to the 2 slides. So this green panel here, like you called it a win-win or home run, whatever. It looks like, in a way, in the long term, most of what we're doing really isn't going to cost us much, because the life cycle savings, like the project cost is 6.8 million, but the life cycle savings is 10.8 million. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, you absolutely are. And so that's everything we're looking at. We're looking at it through the lens of self-funding. And so everything that we're going to implement, and some are better than others. For example, the payback on the building automation system is a fraction of what the HVAC is. And so we're using the low-hanging fruit like that to help fund some of the heavier anchors, the mechanical units. And that's what is carrying that as the savings. But you're absolutely right. The savings from all of this, energy, water, maintenance and operations, et cetera, all that savings is more than sufficient to pay for this equipment over the life of the equipment.
And that's why we're designing logos, so we can start marketing this information.
Yeah, absolutely. And highlighting specifically on the water piece of you've
I like
you're
that.
setting the
That's
standard
great.
for water conservation with the town. Of course.
Councilwoman?
The 6.8 million, is that cost to the town, or does that include what could be additional funding through grants and things like that?
So that is the cost to the town, the project cost, which a large portion of this, I think it's just over $5 million, is being funded through ARPA grants. So you've got grant money from the state through ARPA that is being funding that, the rest coming from general fund. And is there anything I missed on that, or anything you'd add?
Yeah, Mayor, Council, yeah, we received a $5 million grant from the governor's office out of ARPA funds, and that's going to pay for the bulk of it. We had already authorized the 900 or just under $1 million for the HVAC unit for the civic center, or for the event center. And next year's budget will make up the difference out of that 5 million and the 6 million.
Okay, so, yeah, so I just wanted to make it clear that it's not like we're not just like going out of pocket 6.8 million, that we have that 5 million coming from the governor's office and things like that. Okay, yeah, so it's not, it's already a good deal, and then it's an even better deal because we're getting additional funding. And then just for curiosity's sake, is sprinklers and like sprinkler design and stuff, is that something that you looked at? Does that fall under your?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we looked at that pretty extensively. The good news, bad news, Nick on the Parks team is too good at his job on a lot of this. And so you've got a lot of the technology that we would recommend is already in place, as far as not necessarily sprinkler design, but the smart building automation system I mentioned. They've got an equivalent for your water management, and that's at most, if not all of your parks, or your large parks at least, and already being implemented. So that's usually the number one water savings that we identify outside of wastewater within a town is smart irrigation, and you guys are already implementing that. So it's good for you, bad for us on the savings side.
All right, thank you.
Anything else for Brandon? Sir, thank you very much. We'll see you in a few weeks.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
Next up, item 2B, transit planning, IGA with Simpo. Mr. Rodriguez, welcome, sir.
Hello, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council. I'm happy to inform you today that we're continuing to strengthen our partnership with Simpo, as well as obtain some grant dollars that we just captured from the federal government. So the 5307 Urbanized Area Program, I think as many of you have already heard of, but this federal transit program allocates or apportions to the town a $1.6 million every year. And this is our first year that we're actually going to participate in this apportionment. So that's since 2009. So the funding that we have received is not the full 1.6 million, as it does require a local match. So the partnership with Simpo is to basically be a pass-through entity for these planning dollars that will benefit the town. So they will take the leadership with all of these plans. As you can see here, 3 plans in specific. Their commitment for the local match is $44,000 for a full $176,000 federal grant. So again, no cost to the town. We are just going to be a pass-through entity for this funding, and we will receive these 3 plans as you see in your screens. Beginning with the SR State Route 69 Urbanized Corridor Master Plan, which entails traffic signal design, timing plans, pedestrian crossings, bike lanes, curb ramps, signage, pedestrian, bicycle, transit, motorist needs. The next one, Central Yavapai Regional Coordinated Mobility Plan, which will strategize and identify transportation needs of individuals with disabilities, older adults, veterans, and people with low incomes. And then the third is their Active Community Transportation Unified Plan. And again, these 3 plans are regional, so they are Prescott Valley, Prescott, and potentially Chino Valley as well. So while they may not give us the super fine detail for our town, they are kind of looking at it from the perspective of a regional or that regional perspective. And then the third is active community transportation plan. Oh, as I just mentioned, and it'll establish a regional vision for active transportation. Pedestrian, safe routes to school, bicycle, and even equestrian, which I thought was interesting. So we're going to get these 3 plans. They're set to complete 2 of them by the end of the year, and then the last plan, the ACT UP plan, May 2024. So these will all be very good benefits to our town, and it's just to our great joy that we're able to get those with some of those grant funding. So specifically, I guess I'm here today to request Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of the council to approve the intergovernmental agreement with SIMPO as it relates to transit planning. Yes.
Council, we have any questions for Mr. Rodriguez?
I do.
Vice Mayor?
Mr. Mayor, Pedro. So this is a portion of a bigger project that SIMPO's working on that's more like 250,000, that's going to be
Yes.
regional and going to do a few other things that we're participating in at no cost to us, correct?
That is correct.
And it's my understanding that it's also going to come up with a number of projects that will be designed pretty much to the detail. So we could have some projects designed, corridors designed in Prescott Valley as well as part of this, correct?
Yes.
And then we can use those standards on other projects in Prescott Valley.
Yes.
And also use those standards to put in our public works design standards for projects and condition developers.
Yes, you have that exactly right. The neat part of this is that they are plans. If we are trying to seek additional, grant dollars in the future, everything requires that plan, especially if it's from the federal government. You have to have something in place that we follow and that we stick to. And that's kind of the basis of each grant that we receive is, do you have a plan? And what are those elements of each of those plans that you're going to fulfill?
And so what's the timing of this?
Yeah, so the first one that has already begun is the State Route 69 urbanized corridor, and it's going to be completed September of 2023. And then the mobility plan, the coordinated mobility plan, will be December of this year. And then the active community transportation plan will be May of 2024.
So which one of these comes up with the physical standards that we can put in our design manual that we are talking about amending for Public Works?
I think they're probably the first and the last, the SR 69 and the active community transportation plan. They'll have more as it specifically will say for our corridor or our segment that covers, SR 69. And then the active community transportation will be more pedestrian related. So.
And then Gilbert, I'd like to know how this ties in to item 2D.
Ties directly into item 2D.
Okay.
So we'll have a presentation on that item. And I have already spent some time with the consultants that SIMPO selected for the active community transportation plan and have highlighted kind of the vision that's going to be highlighted in 2D, as well as all of our strategic plan initiatives. And so they're very excited. They've got all of that information and will be including that as part of their overall review.
So we could actually use the SIMPO consultants that are already hired, add some funds and get part of 2D, some of the 2D stuff done.
Yes,
Have we considered that?
yes.
Part of it, right?
Okay, so you'll bring that back to us?
The plan? Or what do
No,
you-
adding to the SIMPO.
It'll be included as part of their whole review of our area.
Oh, so we don't even need to add funds.
No.
Okay, okay, cool. Thank you.
So ADOT is usually responsible for SR 69. And all of these items that are listed under the first item, they will be covered by funds that, will they be shared with ADOT, or how does that work?
So SIMPO is conducting a plan for that corridor. What we're providing simply is additional dollars for each of those plans. These plans each are a little, a lot more than than the grant that we got is worth, but it'll at least provide some of that funding that they'll require to look at it as a holistic project from all of these different perspectives, such as bike lanes, different pedestrian corridors, bicycle, transit, motorists. So it's kind of, we're trying to get holistic plans. I think that's where SIMPO is going with all these things, is that a lot of the times we piecemeal certain things and we're just trying to bring everything together. So I hope I answered your question.
So we're just looking at it as, like you said, a master plan, as it says in the
Exactly.
title there.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilwoman?
I just want to clarify, especially for our viewers, all two of them. So SIMPO creates the plan, and then as part of what SIMPO does is they go out and find funding. So like what we're funding right now is just the creation of the plan, and then when they come up with along like 69, and they say, okay, now ADOT, your portion of this plan is this much, and then they put it, and so SIMPO is just kind of like they're the experts and they're the overseers. So we're working with them to create the plan, and then they also know where to go to get all the real fund, because $176,000 isn't. I just want people to know, like, no shovels are hitting the dirt. Projects aren't going to be finished by 9/23 and 12/23 and 5/24. This is just planning.
Just planning, you got it. And yes, SIMPO is the Central Yavapai Metropolitan Planning Organization. They look everything regionally. We look, maybe a little bit just town centered, right? But they look at it regionally and they try to tie in those regional elements. So excellent question.
We don't have anything else for Mr. Rodriguez. I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve an IGA with SIMPO for transit planning activities under the 5307 Urbanized Area Formula Grant by electronic vote.
Second.
Second.
I second it.
Clerk, I'll have to go by voice vote.
Mayor Palguda,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hunt,
Yes.
Councilmember Leyva. That passes, Mayor.
Thanks, ma'am. Moving on to item 2D, connectivity and, I'm sorry, phase, on 2C, phase transit plan, taxi participation. Mr. Rodriguez.
Yes. Thank you again, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of the council. So the second item I had for you is the phased transit plan discussion. I wanted to discuss some of the elements of this plan as it pertains to right now, and hopefully we can come to a decision, or hopefully you can come up with a decision. First of all, I just wanted to provide you with a snapshot of the ridership that we're experiencing right now. That kind of leads into the conversation. So right now we're basically at capacity. We've experienced month over month growth in our ridership. You're looking at here ridership by week. We keep a close look at it week by week to make sure we're making the appropriate decisions. So right now we're at that point where we're growing and we will need additional resources. The grant that we have is going to be utilized at an increased rate, which will definitely, as you'll see in some of the future slides or some of the next slides, that it will reduce the number of years we have for the overall transit system. So, and with this discussion here, I also wanted to refresh some of the events that have occurred over the life of this transit demonstration program that we've kickstarted. So the town of Prescott Valley, town council accepted the October 2020 Central Yavapai Phase Transit Plan, utilizing federal CARES Act funding. And the town council officially voted on it in January 2021 to begin that process. That's how I came in later on after that voting decision. in May of that year. And one of the elements in the phased transit plan, which is the main focus of today's discussion, is that if you remember, it included an element of a ride-hailing subsidy. It was basically set to enable local taxi companies to be part of the system or part of the transit network. This element was part of the request for proposals with New Horizons, so they would be the entity that would oversee the taxi and livery companies, and they would also coordinate trips with them. But unfortunately, we've run through some hurdles with that. First, the one with the town's insurer, Arizona Municipal Risk Retention Pool, AMRRP. They've indicated to the town that it would not, that they would not want to provide insurance if we would accept that element of the phased transit plan for ride-hailing subsidies. I believe not only just for transit, but also for the policy of the town in its entirety. Ivan, if you'd like to confirm. So that was a major drawback to include the local taxi and livery companies. And so, and along with that, there were some conversations that we had with the taxi companies, which they wanted to retain control of their own businesses and not necessarily have this overall network where we can be a little bit more efficient, share rides, which are integral also to the plan. So at that time, after we found that out from the insurance company, New Horizons then stepped in and said, we'll add additional insurance coverage to basically kind of alleviate the concern of the insurance company to allow taxi companies to function. So they stepped in and said, we'll do that, hence the contract amendment that we had that basically gave us a 6 to 8 month review process to incorporate the taxis into the system. That also allowed us to start early on, which we added, I think it was an additional vehicle, and to provide additional service hours that the taxis would have originally provided. So, but unfortunately, here we're in January 21 of 2023. New Horizons provided us with this letter from their board saying, our concerns are basically the same that AMRRP has had, that they don't want to partner with taxi companies due to the liability, potential vehicular accidents, just that have been concerns of the industry. And so here, kind of to summarize, so we have these hurdles here, New Horizon wanting to withdraw partnership due to potential risks. There's also, as mentioned, we need to implement shared rides or pooling of rides for microtransit. They're essential to obtaining federal funding. This is, otherwise it would be a charter service or some other type of service. It would not be public transit. And the efficiency part comes for this type of system is a centralized call center where they can coordinate the rides, being able to share them properly and efficiently and quickly, as this is an on-demand transportation service. And third, if I'll be sharing a little bit on the additional cost or increased costs of the kind of comparing the two systems, one being having one contractor like New Horizons and the other having two taxi companies in this scenario, to just give you an idea of those costs. I'd like to ask you if you have any questions up until now. I know that I did cover a lot.
A question, Pedro.
Sure.
Work in other areas?
So how it's worked in other areas is the town provides funding from itself. It is not utilizing funding from the federal government for that specific type of service. So the biggest part with transit is it must be a public service, not a charter service. They are very against charter service.
Glad we have an option with New Horizons.
They are a local company. They have established themselves here. They're a nonprofit, just as a reminder. So, excellent. So here's just a brief system cost comparison. As you'll notice, these are based off of ridership levels per 3-month periods. As you'll notice, the orange is having one contractor and 2 taxi companies. And then what we have right now is just one contractor. And you can see the difference in the cost per rider. It's quite significant. If you look at kind of what it would cost per each of these ridership levels, you'll see, at 4,394, you're looking at about a $40,000 cost difference. Annual cost difference would be about 157. So just to translate my chart there. And some of those major contributing factors are, additional tax insurance. Again, if the New Horizons board would have said, okay, but in this case, they are saying this is not okay, we do not want to partner. So I just wanted to provide you with this holistic information to outline kind of some of those options if we were to have them. We can do that via other means, via other contractors. After I'll leave it at that, and we'll get back to that. So some of the major contributing factors are taxi insurance increase, contractors insurance increase. We always have to have one vehicle that is wheelchair accessible. That's the other piece. Right now, the taxi and livery companies, they do not have wheelchair accessible vehicles. Therefore, we'd always have to provide a contractor that can provide that service. So in this case, hence the orange row, as you see there, we have to have that one contractor plus the taxi companies to provide service. So, and then the other piece is not just in creating these contracts, but also the taxi cost per trip, which we haven't, or which we have added now. So it adds up, is my point. So looking into the future with CARES Act, so this grant is going to last us 2 years if we increase these service levels. Sure.
Can I just jump in before you jump to that and put a final point on this issue? We have an agreement with New Horizons. They haven't said they won't comply with the agreement. They've simply said in this letter, we'd rather not. And they said if we do have to comply, then we're going to have to get more insurance. We're going to have to pay more. And so more of the money that we're getting from the federal government will go towards insurance than rides. So that's the thing that's being proposed now is if we modify the agreement with New Horizons and get rid of the taxi, then of course we can save that money and provide more rides. But there are other things that we'll then have to do, for example, have more buses and just change the whole concept that was used for the RFQ. And that's why Pedro is here to see if you're interested in amending the agreement that we had with New Horizons.
Thanks, Evan. And so in continuing here with our CARES Act grant, so we would have, at our current service level, we have 2 vehicles that are operating. Sometimes we have our spare vehicle being operated as well during overflow or our increased demand. And right now what we need is our 4 vehicles. And if we keep that service level, as you notice here for each of those periods, they're 1-year periods, we would have a needed service cost of $2,272,000. And these are just additional costs that are associated with the service along with phase 2 of Prescott's microtransit. And just to remind you, this CARES Act funding has always, from the start, been a regional concept. We are the direct recipient in behalf of the Prescott Valley, Prescott area, hence Phase 2. So with all those numbers added, they basically add up to that amount, to the full CARES Act grant award, and our service duration, say beginning March of this year, or this month, we have about 2 years worth of service. So just wanted to make you aware that this is a finite amount for this grant. We will be searching for some public-private partnerships with SIMPO, so that's a good help from them. But just wanted to let you know that this is a finite amount. Again, the decision right now, if we don't make this decision with New Horizons, we have we need to continue serving our growing ridership. And if we don't, we may avoid loss of riders. And we also need to keep continuing to provide that service level. So that is what I have for you.
Pedro, how much increase in ridership do you see happening? I mean, we saw what the trend was, but how long do you see that continuing?
It has not plateaued. And if you're looking at, it's too early to tell. Right now, this, again, I'm constantly reminding, I guess, but this is a demonstration project. What we see to establish, say, a route, say a fixed route, sometimes it's looked at in 7-year increments in the valleys, just to give you a perspective. So the phased transit plan basically sets us up or provides that foundation to see what that demand is. So right now it's too early to tell. And I feel like we need to continue this phased transit plan with microtransit as being the mode of transit, and just to get or understand that level of demand. So if you were to choose, right now I'm not proposing a contract amendment, but say in the future, the contract amendment would increase the contract amount in case of that ridership growing. So that gives us kind of, we're basically able to increase or contract the service as needs be. But right now we are definitely at capacity, and we have a lot more to go. So.
Councilwoman?
You go back one slide, please.
Yeah.
So when we jump from 3 vehicles to 4 vehicles, where is that funding? Like, is the money for the 4th vehicle already set aside, or where is that coming from?
From CARES Act grant.
So, but is it like, is it recorded? Because I'm just seeing like costs.
Yeah. So these, yes. So that's just the cost that we came up with for a 1-year service increment. So that's everything. It's not in the rest of the tables. That's been added. I can provide that to town council if you'd like to see that.
So I just want to be sure that if the purchasing a 4th vehicle isn't going to change these numbers, or because we are pulling it out of our finite amount of money. So
no, it will not. It's included. So the purchase of vehicles is also included in the just under the needed service cost under capital assets. So that $739,000 has vehicles also included.
okay. And personally, I like the idea of just having more vans over taxi services. One, because we control the level of service. It's a standard set by the town and New Horizons. And branding, I love seeing the Yava line driving around, so thanks.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor?
Pedro, can you define what Prescott Microtransit Phase 2 means?
2 vehicles and a smaller microtransit zone. That's the summarized sentence.
So that's what we're doing now, right?
So right now what we have is, as mentioned to you above, the period from September 2022, which we started through March, is we have 3 vehicles. So 2 vehicles and a spare.
We have 3 vehicles now.
So 3 vehicles, yeah. We have 1 leased vehicle. One of those, the spare is the leased vehicle.
Okay. So the phase 2, we're in phase 1 now.
For phase 1.
So what does phase 2 mean?
So phase 2 will add 2 more vehicles.
Got it. Okay.
So what I see is we need 4. We at least need 4, and we will reach capacity. But Prescott Microtransit Phase 2 will add 2 to Prescott. And if we need a spare, we'll take it from what we have already built.
Not counting the spare when you say add 2.
No, it'll be 2 revenue vehicles.
Add 4, does that increase geography any?
So it'll continue to provide the service here as we have for our current microtransit zone. And then we're adding another microtransit zone in Prescott that will serve 2.
And Prescott is supporting that?
So I'm always planning for Prescott. I don't want to jump the gun and say, oh, Prescott, I have no funds for you. This is what we're experiencing right now for Prescott Valley, and that's what we're running with. SIMPO has taken on that responsibility to speak with Prescott. I've approached them to say, hey, is this where I can step in to talk with Prescott and see if they want this? I think SIMPO is going to have those conversations. I'm sure. I think they have had that conversation already. It hasn't been as positive, but SIMPO is hopeful.
I guess I would like to see some of our area added in too, like the northern Prescott Valley, Pronghorn, and residents.
And so to that, as kind of mentioned before in the previous agenda item, is that we approached the federal government with this plan. This is the plan that we have. This is the plan that we, budgeted for and are going to follow through with. So unfortunately, since 2020, October 2020, you hear the buzzword of supply chain issues. For example, we purchased our vehicles, hence that letter I think that I had you all sign to purchase the vehicles then was because all these transit agencies were competing for the same supply of vehicles. When you have that happen, you have this inflationary scenario. In our case, we bought the vehicles for $100,000 each, and now the same vehicle is $160,000. So these varying price levels, throughout the service have definitely impacted the way that we are approaching the phased transit plan, where we could have maybe created an additional extension, right, to the northern or southern parts of Prescott Valley. But we have to follow that plan. And now with the dollars kind of, contracting, or the value of those dollars is now greatly diminished. So we're even more constrained.
So where is the
what we can
1
provide.
million annually in this slide?
So the 1.6 million requires a local match. My direction has been utilize CARES Act as the town has not moved forward with basically the approval of transit continuing past the CARES Act period.
So the 1.6 million, we're not taking any of it.
We're not taking any of it. We baby steps, I guess, with SIMPO's planning activities, but that's up for the town manager, town council to decide what we want to do, moving past again this 2-year period that we have left.
Mayor, members of the council, that's again, we're going to have to start that conversation of what do we do long-term to secure funding for this? Because once the federal funds run out through SIMPO for this region, we would have to come up with that sum through either the general fund, which would be a huge hit to the general fund, or we need to have a conversation with the community about how do we dedicate funding for this so that we can continue to have this great service within our community. And I think to the vice mayor's point, we do have plans for an expanded just beyond, there was like a phase 1 within PV that was south of 89, north of 69, kind of in the core. And then we were going to expand up into Pronghorn and down to Quellwood at some point.
Phase transit plan is kind of the core, as you first mentioned. Phase 2 is Prescott, another transit zone in Prescott. And phase 3 is actually an expansion of Prescott, going north. And then phase 4 is connecting the two municipalities.
Councilwoman, did you have something?
Yes. Pedro, so I, having received this letter from New Horizons and also seeing that the staff recommends that we support this eliminating the taxis, I tend to support that as well. My question would be is, would we see a deficit if we removed the taxis from the number of people that we are serving? I know that I have one person that is always bragging on Yava Line and how happy he is with this service. And he shared that one day a car showed up and he was very surprised, but they showed up and took care of his needs and dropped him off and picked him up, and he was very happy with that. So if we eliminate the taxis, are we going to be causing a problem there?
So one versus the other, you mean? So as we see right here with the financial numbers and comparing the two types of systems, as mentioned to you before, we would experience 10 to 15%, or no, excuse me, 19 to 20% increase in cost per rider.
And that's
If we
with
use the taxi companies due to the insurance, kind of the previous slide, insurance increase, the contractor's insurance, because right now the taxi companies, they per a state bill, their minimum coverage threshold is 250,000 right now, and so what the I believe New Horizons insurer, they're saying they need to bump it up to $1 million. So that for that type of policy, it's about a $10,000 to $12,000 policy on the minimum side. So that's always being added to that cost per rider. And so now the contractor is then saying, so the insurance, that's for the taxis, and then the contractor's insurance also needs to increase to add that level of padding, because the biggest conversation piece is that the town does not want to, we don't want it to hit the town. And so we have to add these various layers of insurance coverage from the taxi service and all the way to us. Because one, liability could exceed easily 1 million if you have multiple, and because we have to share or pool the rides for public transportation, now you're looking 3-4 people. So it just, that window, or not necessarily window, but that probability for a higher, issue, if a vehicular accident that we experience could be detrimental,
Mr. Mayor and Council, just to add to that, the concept of working with the taxis was considered kind of an advanced idea. It wasn't something that other people did, and we were trying something new. And the purpose was to increase ridership and options. And it was to use the software so that people could, use that software and whatever was available, a taxi or the van would come and get them. And that was the concept. So definitely, if you don't have the taxis, you have to have something else in order to have that additional ridership. And what New Horizons is proposing is that you get another bus to do that.
So I kind of support that, do away with the taxis, and let's purchase another.
And just to let you know, this decision, working with New Horizons was not made lightly. With the insurance companies, Ivan and I, we talked about 4 or 5 different options to try to put them, try to put them back, despite the many arguments and discussions that we had with taxi companies. This was not taken lightly, nor from New Horizons. They're a nonprofit. They believed highly in free enterprise. And that's great. That's what we wanted. But after experiencing these things through our insurers and saying, don't do it, I guess that's where we're at.
Councilwoman?
So I'm reading here that it'll cost about $10,000 per vehicle in additional insurance.
So that cost is built into the ridership, but we'd have to look at a specific company with a fleet and background of how they've operated to determine the exact cost for the insurance. It could be 10 to 12,000, or it could be more, depending on their history.
So is a $10 million umbrella,
So right now we have a $10 million umbrella, yes.
and that has there's the requirement in order for.
So that $10 million requirement was to provide public transit. I believe AMRRP, our insurer, they desired that to be comparable to the town's overall coverage.
The insurance company, our insurance company, was not willing to insure this system. So they don't insure it. It's being insured entirely by New Horizons, who then has us as an additional insured. And that's what we're operating under right now. Our insurer simply wasn't willing to do it. And they especially weren't willing to do it with taxis. But when they realized that we wouldn't use taxis, at least to start with, and that we could tag along with New Horizons, they said that's the better way to go. And so that's the way we're doing it right now.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman?
You said that phase 2 being to Prescott needs to be the plan for federal funding purposes?
So that is part of the phased transit plan, and that's what we're trying to move forward with. But we haven't been because we want Prescott to say yes. They haven't said that yet. And we're always planning to expand there. Right now, we are experiencing ridership growth in this area, and if they haven't said yes, it would be wrong to keep our service level down and keep what we're doing and provide kind of a status quo, and possibly saying no to new riders because we only have that limited resource. So right now, the decision that we move forward with is we have to provide service to Prescott Valley, who is wanting it, who we are seeing or where we are seeing the demand.
Right. And I don't want it to make it seem like we're in a rush to serve Prescott, because it's not necessarily that we're trying to serve Prescott. We're trying to serve Prescott Valley residents who need to get to Prescott. But it seems a little bit unfair that, okay, you Prescott Valley residents who live in the core, we're trying to make it so you can get to Prescott, but the rest of you guys, you don't even get to ride the bus. Right. And so, but if it's for funding purposes, which does make sense, if Prescott wants to get on board, or even if the city doesn't want to contribute, but then the hospital or Yavapai College or Embry-Riddle, there's funding opportunities there.
Yes.
And so I understand wanting to expand into Prescott, but I just want to make sure that it's clear why we're trying to do it that way.
Excellent. So the state is the designated recipient. There's a difference between direct and designated. They are the designated body in behalf of transit agencies in the state. So they have deemed us to live in the Prescott Valley, Prescott urbanized area. We are the direct recipient of those federal funds, but to support transit in both areas. So maybe the idea of, Prescott Valley residents, being able to as far as only Prescott Valley residents to go to Prescott isn't necessarily the whole idea. The whole idea is for both to be supported, if that makes sense. So, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just to make sure, yeah, these are funds that were not. It's not a grant to Prescott Valley. It's a grant to provide transit to the Simpo region, and Prescott is obviously a part of that overall transit planning effort. So it's not, there was just money for Prescott Valley. It has to be looked at as a whole region.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Yeah, and ADOT, I had conversations with ADOT about, how do we utilize or how do we divvy up this funding? And if Prescott is not wanting to use it, then that's where we're moving forward and using it here.
That kind of goes into my question. What's your time frame on having that conversation with Prescott? And then what is your plan B?
That's up to SIMPO. So SIMPO wants to take the lead in that conversation with Prescott. Yeah, I'm not sure as to the, I can get an established plan and get back to you.
Council, anything else for Mr. Rodriguez? So moving forward, sir, just make the adjustments as you see fit and legal sees fit.
We'll
and
be
then bring it
bringing
back.
you the amended agreement.
Excellent.
Moving on, item 2D, connectivity and infrastructure.
Excellent. All right. So now to another topic. So Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council, we're very happy to present to you something that town staff has been working on as it relates to the town strategic plan, specifically the connectivity infrastructure and tourism, increase in tourism-related activities. So the staff has created or kind of kickstarted a vision to fulfill these goals via a pedestrian path here in Prescott Valley. So the path will increase resident livability and create kind of a destination community, directly improving the town's quality of life. So we're very excited today to provide this to you. Jessica Barragan, she's from Development Services. She's our planner, I believe.
Land use planner,
Land use planner.
development services.
Development Services. I'll move this over here. So we'll be tag teaming the presentation today for you. And yeah, we'll get things started. So the first part here is kind of some benefits of a pedestrian plan that will reimagine our community. So we're looking at healthy and active lifestyle. Several studies have found that people get, if they have a pedestrian path near their home, they're more likely to be healthy and active. Social ties with community members are also promoted. And poor health outcomes in a community are a significant barrier for a community to attract or maintain companies and talent. So having this healthy or reimagined active lifestyle will definitely benefit that. The next point is a boost in local economy. So a job creation, tourism and development of commercial businesses will increase, as well as increase real estate values. So these are all really good things from this pedestrian path that we're going to present to you. And one of the interesting things that the National Association for Home Builders mentioned was that one of the elements or features that they want, that people want in a community, is actually a pedestrian path. So we're trying to make this kind of a holistic type plan for pedestrians and bicyclists. And then it'll also promote a safe and pedestrian environment. The path will provide an option for pedestrian travel away from vehicular trafficked areas. And then, as mentioned before, this, we want to make Prescott Valley a destination. It will most likely become a brand for the town. And so this reimagination or reimagined way of living will provide a lot of good benefits to the town of Prescott Valley citizens, enhancing our current amenities and developing new ones and connecting them all. So we'll go ahead and go to the next slide here. So an interconnected community. So the vision that town staff have talked about, we've held a variety of meetings with multiple departments just to kind of get an idea of what this would look like, is a 24-mile loop This starts from Highway 169 to the south, and it kind of goes through the Agua Fria River path on the east, and toward the southwest, it'll go toward Glassford Hill, and then it'll come back down through Stone Ridge all the way back to its origination. So as you can see here in this map, we have a variety of features or a variety of elements that we'll explain to you in a little bit. But basically, this path is to promote an active lifestyle for pedestrians, bike, and even equestrians. So as you saw in the initial picture here, you can see this is actually Tucson's Loop, which we'll talk about in a second. But they have almost 137 miles with other neighboring communities. They name it the Tucson Loop, which includes accessibility for equestrian and bicycle riders and pedestrians. So this is something that we wanted to incorporate into this, kind of keeping our roots, our culture. And so we're very excited about it. So the path would include 12-foot wide or a 12-foot wide path and potential extensions to other activity centers such as Fane Park or Arizona Downs, just a variety of places. This isn't a one-all be-all scenario. This is more of just kind of seeing where we can go with this reimagination of our community. So
If I could just interrupt
Yeah.
you for a moment.
yeah.
Just explain why a portion of it, the eastern portion is green and then orange.
Excellent question. So the equestrian piece is that green. I think going into kind of the city or the town center would be a little, maybe not so good of an idea. So, excellent question. And I'll hand the time over to Jessica to talk to you about project challenges.
Thank you for having me today, Mayor, and council members. I am going to go over some of these items, opportunities that were identified. There's still a lot of research, and I really want to emphasize this is a very evolutionary approach. So with new development requirements, we do have a slew throughout the general plan that do touch on the connectivity issues with the town, and some just fragmented developments that had impeded our ability to have that connectivity. So we really want to be able to implement this general plan broadly. And in doing so, multiple partnerships would be involved. That would be interdepartmental agencies, outside agencies, regional agencies. We also want all the civic services to be involved. They're going to be impacted in one way or another for the increase in population and also the build development. The sustainable enhancement aspect, that's going to be very data. We really need to collect more data to be able to analyze it and set priorities. So we don't really want to throw things around. We really want to be strategic. So part of that is establishing a methodology. Again, this path is going to change. It's a very evolutionary approach to connectivity. And one of the main ways that we first looked at was seeing all the potential right-of-ways that are available that we can utilize for this plan. We also are going to get a lot of public input throughout the process, and that is also going to impact and influence where these paths are potentially going to go. This is a very lengthy process. So again, some of the aspects that are going to make it more lengthy is the multiple grant funding cycles, and we will be getting money. We will be seeking grants to allow us to do this, and that will be also part of potential real estate purchases from the town on some of these potential private easements. and also seeking property owner dedications from new developments. And maintenance and planning, we do have a lot of wording in our zoning code and our general plan for the developers, new developers, and existing HOAs and developments to maintain their properties. However, it hasn't been regularly enforced, so we'll be coming up with trying to get strategies to have that in place. Cost-effective maintenance, we are looking at various alternatives to permeable surfaces, landscaping. We want to be able to have a sustainable way to maintain this and for others to be involved in the maintenance of it willingly as well. Agreed upon standards and protocols. So we are going to seek out involvement from the entire community. And part of that is giving them a lot of recognition for participating in it. But we also want them to adhere and understand the standards and the protocols that are going to be involved in this long-term plan. Developments necessary. So I had already kind of mentioned the partnership. So it is necessary for us to connect with and have more discussions with our civic service providers, police, fire, EMS, and any other stakeholders that might be involved in certain segments of new development, and conservation initiatives. Because that is very broadly said, but it's very interconnected, and like Pedro said, this is a very holistic approach encompassing very many elements, and yeah, I'm going to pass it on over to Pedro to take care of that.
Excellent.
Features.
And that kind of goes with your comment, Vice Mayor Hunt, how the active transportation plan from SIMPO is going to help us to keep that holistic vision, making sure that, all these pedestrian, bicyclists, motorists, everyone is, it's cohesive. So, but yeah, up front, we wanted to provide you, this is great and all, wonderful 24-mile, great loop. It's incorporating all these things, but just wanted to let you know of these potential challenges up front. We are being realistic with our approach, and so we just want to make sure that you knew that. So some of those features that we're looking to incorporate, we've looked at a variety of municipalities, a variety of communities that have implemented something like this. We had mentioned Tucson's Loop. It's 137 miles. It seems kind of a big, and it is a big effort. We also looked at the Louisville Loop in Kentucky. They have a 100-mile path. South Carolina's Spanish Moss Trail, it's a little bit on the shorter end, 10 miles. Missoula, Montana's Bitterroot Trail, New Orleans, the list goes on. I think we had so many different conducted a variety of research, and so kind of we want to kind of maybe give you guys some pictures here to give you a little bit more of that perspective that
Yes.
we're looking at.
Yes, so possible features, and again, this is going to change, but we want to have hubs for cyclists to have repair stations, water stations. We want to be able to provide dog relief areas, and you can see kind of in the picture the main point, but I think we're probably going to talk about this also, is a lot. Safety issues were what resonated the most from our conversations with other departments, and wanting to keep vehicular traffic away, or completely separating them to make it more inviting and safe for families to want to use these paths, because we do have a lot of paved roads or paved sidewalks that are very underutilized, because we didn't really take that approach in the past. In the next slide. Bridges. There are a couple opportunities that we identified for bridges in the area, and well, I can just leave it at that. There's one of the features. We want to make sure that it's cohesive with our monument signage and really caters to the environmental and the environmental aspect. We want to really correlate it and just make it make cohesive with all the other elements and all the other monuments that we have in the community.
And I think to add to that, as part of these bridge and this heavy infrastructure is for a continuous path. The more the path is continuous, the more people are likely to utilize it. That's what all these communities have said, so.
I could just, something like this obviously is a major investment and wouldn't be done overnight. But to, beginning to really think about what we could do to transform this community. Highway 69 divides, the town, and there's, if you were able to have a seamless connection from a pedestrian standpoint, and maybe it's not at just one location, could be at a couple, that would be transformative. And so that's the opportunity that we wanted to plant here today of, again, tying this into the SIMPO study, really getting, some of that advanced planning put in place. And then as new developers come in, other opportunities present itself in the years ahead, we'll have opportunities where we can begin to tie this all together from a comprehensive pedestrian connectivity component.
Thank you. Yes. Okay, continued possible features. Equestrian amenities. We already kind of highlighted on the path. We do want to make sure that these paths are appropriate for the users. So, and also we want to make sure we emphasize on our culture. We don't want to compromise the city's longstanding culture, and even with the increase in population and development, we still want to be able to maintain that character.
Excellent. Some of the other items, kind of bringing some of the historical aspects back into town, such as, the Prescott East Railroad Station that was near the Dells that our Iron King Trail connects to. So bringing these variety of different elements, features, into this path, making them connecting, having some signage, a lot of multiple access points throughout the 24-mile loop. Parking lot here, potential trailhead. And then here we have kind of building on or enhancing our natural features. This is Glassford Hill, my imaginary Glassford Hill. So, kind of building on to what we already have, like this is an amphitheater, I believe it's in Colorado. It's, just utilizing what we have and connecting it. Here's summer sliding or mountain sliding. This is another, up and coming activity for families and children. And then, we're also looking at the sustainability, right? How can we maintain or keep the maintenance of this loop? In this case, this is an idea from Floyd's Park in Kentucky, or the parklands of Floyd's Park in Kentucky. They have venues for corporate events, variety of events. They have a huge pavilion area. These are their actual pictures. And I had a conversation with them. They mentioned how this actually maintains their whole, at least their segment of the Kentucky Loop. The Kentucky Loop is a bigger loop, and they have a segment called the Parklands.
Great. I'll go ahead and, culminate the whole idea is, again, it is a way to really emphasize and implement all the policies, all the goals and policies in our current general plan, and creating a resilient, vibrant community through connectivity. And you can see here, I kind of wanted to put everything, try to get a good visual. We want to be able to implement this so that it caters to each segment, each segment will have different kind of characteristics. Each community has its own needs, certain demographics that will be utilizing it more, maybe students. So we really want to be able to also incorporate, really plan more the built environment, the built environment around the existing natural environment, so that we could tie it all in together. And I think this picture kind of just gives you a really it just points out all the elements of incorporating a natural integration that creates a holistic and vibrant community.
So, kind of to conclude, these are some phases that we're going to come across. While they look very brief here on the slide, they actually have a lot of sub activities and efforts that we have to accomplish. For the planning phase, we definitely need some, again, starting off with that process, we need a plan first. And there are a lot of federal planning grants out there that we can that we can encompass, and varying processes of procurement for contractors, consultants, and all of it to try to get us to shovel-ready status. So the shovel-ready status will include all of that public input, putting all of our ducks in a row, with citizen participation, needs assessments, data analysis, and maybe if you can talk about the construction development phase.
Yes, so we kind of touched on it a little bit. Real estate purchases, we'll look into potential private easements that would be in congruence with the plan. And as mentioned, federal grants, federal construction grants for some of these. The main way that we would see the short-term implementation is really just to implement what we already have in our goals and policies. And if you actually do look, there's quite a lot. And so it's just a matter of really just having the developments, new developments in particular, being looked at in a way that will cater to having these paths and maybe make it less transit-oriented and more pedestrian-oriented in the landscaping, in the design, so that it in the long run, it is going to be connected over the years. And having special development agreements with these developers that are adjacent to already planned paths, or potentially expanding on those paths. So I'll kind of leave that in a nutshell.
Excellent. So yeah, we just wanted to provide you what we're doing with the town's strategic plan and how we're moving forward to accomplish those goals as they relate to connectivity and tourism. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Good presentation. Council, you have any comments?
Send us that loop map by email.
Sorry, couldn't hear you.
Map?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Send the whole PowerPoint. That'd be better. Thank you.
It's obvious how much work you've put into this. It's very exciting to even conceive that we might go in that direction. And even though it will be a period of time and years possibly down the road before we actually see any of it occur, we so appreciate all of the work that you have put into it. Thank you.
Councilwoman?
I love this, first of all. It's so fantastic, such a great idea. I really love it. I know that it's very much vision stage right now, but I still have a couple practical questions just so we can kind of keep it on the table to think about. So for where it starts in the Agua Fria and going up on the side, are we talking like down in the wash?
Parallel to, or if the recommendation is in the wash. I know Tucson's Loop is actually in the wash for a lot of segments. So
The wash is, I've done a ton of writing in the wash, but it's just not always dry. So
Yes.
that was my first thought there was, I just don't want any like flash flood situations.
That's exactly right.
Whatever. And then also keeping it equestrian friendly is fantastic. And that's really great for our Dewey neighbors who can, you know, hop on right there. But we would want to either have like horse trailer parking or some kind of connectivity to the north, you know, where all of the rest of our equestrian neighbors are. And then as far as like event centers and amphitheaters and maybe a botanical garden, what would parking look like for that? Because if somebody's, you know, hey, I'm getting married at this fantastic venue, but bring your hiking shoes. So is that's kind of something that would need to be, those would need to be strategically placed so that there is parking, so you don't have to walk to it if you don't want to.
Yes, exactly right. So we're looking at about 5 activity centers for that venue, you know, such as kind of like a barn kind of thing. It would have its own parking lot and its own accessible from one of our arterials. So definitely, you know, looking at the activity centers where people are congregating and creating parking lots, you know, as needs be, definitely. Yeah.
And one more question, so where it comes, following the Agua Fria, but up to the north part, ideally, if we end up developing a riparian area up there because of the new effluent water, this would kind of all go, right, the path would go along there and utilizing all of that,
That's
yeah.
what we would like to do.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
We actually did talk about how distance equals inconvenience. So we want to make it accessible and we want to make it inviting so that it is used and safe, so that people can feel it's a family-oriented community, and we want them to feel comfortable using what we already have and then expanding on that.
Anything else?
I've actually been on portions of the Tucson pedestrian path, and with a group of people that were not only walking, but also rollerblading. And we ran into also kids that were using, as long as they're getting into the weeds a little bit, into using their skateboards. And so this would obviously need to be, as far as the safety issue, you know, it was a little bit harrowing, you know, having to circumvent all these things that were going on. So anyway, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Judy, Glasford Dells Regional Park update.
Mayor, Council, welcome to the first major stop on our future Lasso Loop. Glasford Dells Regional Park, which is what we are calling this now. This is an exciting project. It addresses actually 3 of our strategic council goals, including quality of life, purchasing and expanding open space, as well as building additional trails, multi-use paths, and potentially related to that is increasing tourism in our community. So 3 questions we're going to go over in this presentation. My apologies, I'm trying to talk too fast. Where have you been? Where have we been? Where are we going? And where are we now? Not in that order, but we will go in that order. Questions you might ponder in your own lives and in my life. Where have I been? Why am I here? Where am I going? So where have we been? The town and the city of Prescott and Yavapai County signed an intergovernmental agreement on May 26, 2022. That agreement provides a framework to purchase approximately 3,500 acres on Glassford Hill. Part of that agreement, Yavapai County agreed to contribute 35% of the costs for that. And the acreage is roughly split 50-50 between the 2 communities. Yavapai County was not interested in owning any of the property, but they wanted to be at the table participating. So we appreciate them being a partner there. Where have we been? Again, this appraisal that we hired was completed on May 26, 2022. 3,463 acres at a total cost of $22.4 million. During this time after we signed the IGA, we have been meeting regularly with the City of Prescott, Yavapai County, the Arizona State Land Department, and the Arizona Parks and Trails Department. They've all been fabulous partners in moving this project forward. Where are we now? We currently have a bill at the legislature, HB 2518, which would allocate $3.5 million towards the purchase of this property. It has passed the first 2 committees. The House Land, Agriculture, and Rural Affairs Committee passed on a 6-0-3 vote, and it also passed the House Appropriations Committee on a 10-4 vote. We're waiting for that to go before the full House for a vote, at which point it would be transferred to the Senate for their consideration, and at some point this will get tagged, as an appropriations bill, and will get wrapped up in the budget discussions and negotiations. They are still learning to get along down there. They are not playing nice in the sandbox. So we'll see how our legislature is able to adopt their budget, but I suspect they will be there till June 30th, which is their statutory deadline to approve a budget, and we hope that this is included. The Arizona State Land Department has ordered an update to the appraisal. Because it's 6 months old, they can't send it to auction without a more current appraisal. So that's in process now. So where are we going? We are looking at 3 different tracks as we proceed with this project. First is the land acquisition. Second is community outreach and public participation. And third is a request for proposals. These 3 things may all be going on at the same time. So the land acquisition. The area you see in green there is what would be the first phase of acquisition. For Presque Isle, that would mean acquiring 1,262 acres, and for Prescott, it would be about 953 acres. That green area roughly overlays with the same tracts of land that were designated as suitable for conservation back in 1998, I believe. So this is a concept that's been talked about for 25 years now, preserving Glassford Hill. We are targeting a July or August purchase date of this year. The estimated cost, if the state funding comes through, would be about $4.3 million net cost to the town. And if that state funding isn't approved, it would cost approximately $5.4 million. This is money that we are budgeting or proposing to budget in our next fiscal year. This is already including the county contribution that's already taken off. So that would be our net cost. Second component to this 3-track system is getting community input on this project. That would include online surveys, a social media campaign, and neighborhood meetings. We are talking about establishing an advisory committee that would assist us with this project. That could include members from the neighborhood, HOAs, local businesses, civic leaders, and environmental components as well. In addition to that, we would also be looking at a request for proposals from a third party that could design, build, and operate a Dan Hill mountain bike park. We would contract potentially with a professional to help us craft an RFP. We had a meeting just the other day with our financial advisors. They have contacts that are used to writing these kinds of RFPs and projects. We also had a meeting with the International Mountain Bike Association a couple of weeks ago. They are very excited about this project as well. And why? Why are we doing this? Well, Presque Isle does not assess a property tax. We are always looking at ways to increase or diversify our revenues. I moved here in 2004. From the day I moved here, I've heard it over and over and over again. We need to find ways to get people off of Highway 69. We have a lot of people driving through, going to Prescott, but what can we do to keep them in Prescott Valley? So this downhill mountain bike course has the potential to increase our tourism, diversify our economy away from just housing growth, and also to preserve the area from future development and protect our water resources. And as we've been having conversations with state land and the city of Prescott, this definitely can be part of a regional park, if not a state park. I'm going to show you a video. If you have a queasy stomach, you may look away at times. It's a mountain biker at Spider Mountain, Texas, where they have a lift serve downhill mountain bike course.
Right at the top of the trailheads. This is absolutely incredible. It looks like a cool little trail right here with the jump. An even better view over here. Jeez, this
Think
is
of
so
Glassford
pretty.
Hill overlooking Prescott Valley.
This next trail was called the Tarantula Trail, and it was a blue trail. We had a local, Chuck, take us down it, and it had a wall ride, it had other wooden features, a couple fast, loose sections, and a couple jumps too, but it had everything, and it was super flowy. Even this little section, whoa, it was awesome. Oh, I forgot about this one.
Questions?
Questions or comments for Mr. Judy?
I was just going to say, oh, to be young again. Wow. Is there a speed limit to this? I mean, how fast were they going? It seems very fast.
You know, from what we're aware of, like this facility, they have different types of trails. It's like a ski resort. They have a black diamond course, which is for the most expert skiers. And then they have, you know, the blue or the green courses, which are for more beginner or moderate bikers. So, you know, each trail we could build really to what the community wanted. We could build some of these exciting, you know, black diamond trails for mountain bikers that are more experienced than some of the bunny hill type trails for kids. And, you know, at the base, you know, potentially a pump track for toddlers just learning how to ride their bikes. So really the world is our oyster here and how we design this and what features we have.
I was also thinking that lift, I know when there's a limited time as to when the lift comes by you, it picks you up and then you go. Do they stop the lift to mount the bikes to get them?
I've never been on one. I would assume they would have to be able to mount their bikes and then get in position.
It's going to be exciting to see, but I'm not sure.
Councilwoman?
Do you have a amount of acreage that you're planning to designate just to the mountain bike portion to where, and then, you know, a separate amount of acreage that would just be for people not on mountain bikes? I know a lot of times people hear mountain bike trails and then they just think that they're never going to be able to participate on any of the other features on Glassford Hill because those people are coming at them 50 miles an hour or whatever.
Mayor, council member, definitely we would look to bifurcate the types of trails where we would have hiking only trails and then mountain bike trails so that everybody could take advantage of the facilities.
And then did you say that you have had a mountain bike club like actually look at the area?
We have had an online conversation with the International Mountain Bike Association. This is an entity that has worked with the city of Prescott on building some of their trails. They talked about potentially coming on site. They've not specifically evaluated this proposal, but they would love to be part of our project.
I'm just thinking because that most of the portions of that trail that we just saw there was very smooth, and our hill is a volcano. And I mean, even the walking path is perilous at times with the amount of just loose lava rock and just granite and everything that's up there. So I was just curious what their input is on that. So thank you.
Councilman?
What about horseback riding trails?
Mayor, council member, that's not something that we have talked about to date, but definitely something that we could consider as well to make sure we're capturing all elements of our community. Potentially there's an individual horse riding trail. You know, we have potentially 3,500 acres to work with in addition to the work that Prescott has already done. You know, Prescott has, I believe, nearly hundreds of miles of trails, the Prescott Circle Trail and others that connect into this, so that potentially a possibility.
I think that could be great for tourism.
Anything else for Mr. Judy? Thank you, sir.
Would you like to watch the video again? Just kidding. Thank you.
Mr. Judy's got jokes tonight.
I might
Up item
start.
2F, drug enforcement presentation.
Mayor and Council, I'm standing in for Chief Tyser tonight. He's on a well-earned vacation. James Edelstein, Police Commander with your police department. You won't need motion sickness medication for my presentation. I have a very exciting topic. We're going to be talking about a drug enforcement unit. Update you on its progress, what they're doing, which is very exciting, why we formed the unit, how we went about forming the unit, how they work with a lot of different organizations to accomplish their mission, and kind of some of the results of what they've been doing. So 2015 to 2019 was an interesting period for not just Prescott Valley, but the state and our country, because what was happening, and we didn't see it really quickly up front, was that the Mexican cartels were changing the drug game. They went from heroin and other more naturally produced drugs like marijuana to almost exclusively now fentanyl with a little bit of methamphetamine. And so between 15 and 19 in Prescott Valley here, we had a number of overdose deaths that we really hadn't experienced before. There were 42 over that 5-year period. So that's about 8 per year. And then in 2020, we had 18 in 1 year. And not only were there 18 deaths, 3 of them were teenagers. So it was very impactful, tragic. Our detectives were working quite hard on these cases, these overdose cases, to try to bring these dealers to justice. And, you know, I mentioned fentanyl and methamphetamine. It's easy to forget, but important to remember that it's not just fentanyl that's killing kids and adults these days. Methamphetamine is causing overdoses at a rate we've never seen before as well. It is much less of the quantity of overdoses than fentanyl, but it's significant, something we need to remember. So we needed a local approach. We recognized that. We did some research at the police department with some of our partners in the law enforcement community in Yavapai County to look at what we could do differently to investigate these drug homicides, is what we're calling them. And then the council gave us very clear direction, and we formed our drug enforcement unit. You know, the primary goal of this team is to reduce the trafficking of narcotics, but I would say a significant goal as well is to, through doing that, impact other kinds of crime that narcotics is a part of, like property crime, but also these drug homicides that were occurring. So how did we do it? We selected 4 incredible team members, one of which, the sergeant, had a significant amount of experience in narcotics investigations. We educated all of them through several different trainings that are detailed on the slide. We took the time to equip them properly, and then they got to work. And they got to work in about April of 21. So when you talk about how much time they've had to have an impact, you know, we're talking almost 2 years now. And as you'll see here shortly, they've made a significant impact. How do they do their job? You know, getting into the particulars of how narcotics investigations are conducted is probably not a great idea in this venue, but I can tell you that it's no surprise if you watch TV. They're getting information from people, they're working the information, they're working with our patrol officers, our criminal investigations unit. They're taking information that they are all ingesting, and then they're using that information to go out into the community and try and put these dealers of narcotics in jail. They are also collaborating with agencies, again, local, county, state, and federal agencies, because just like all criminals, they don't recognize jurisdictional boundaries. So, you know, when they cross between Prescott Valley and Prescott, they don't care. So we need to be working directly hand in hand with our local law enforcement partners, but also because some of these organizations that we end up investigating are statewide, and most of them, in fact, frankly, all of them, end up looking south of the border for the original source of these narcotics. So we're working all across the boundaries of local all the way to national level organizations. Let me highlight real quick a partnership with the Drug Enforcement Administration. We recently, council approved our partnership with them. We're going to have 2 task force officers that are going to be trained and certified. And there's some significant benefits to the town, including some overtime dollars, access to equipment, but as well as access to intelligence and information. So that's a great partnership to take a moment to highlight. our investigations in Prescott Valley are our investigations. We bring in resources to help us, not the other way around. So somebody asked recently if we had a reputation yet, and I asked the question, and that's what I got. We have arrestees of our units that are saying, be extra sneaky in PV. Those guys don't mess around, and mess around was not the exact word used. That's the PG version. So there's a lot of stats there in front of you. I think it's important to recognize that those first column worth of stats is the partial year. So you can see the second column is significant. That's a full year's worth of their activity. You know, I want to commend our sergeant and the team members. They give of themselves. They work a lot of overtime, and the people and the things that they see on a daily basis are very impactful to them individually. They really care about not just getting the drugs off the street and putting the dealers away, but about getting people help. And so I constantly hear about conversations they're having with arrestees, with addicts and other people that they have contact with. And they're not just putting people in jail, they're trying to get them services and help. Because in the end, if we can fix the addiction problem, then there's no more demand. Hopefully the supply goes away. And if you have any questions, I will take them.
Council, you have anything? And just to point out, the meth alone it's in grams, and I just did the math, and it's 9.5 pounds. It's a lot of meth for Prescott Valley in a place where we originally were told that there was no demand for a unit such as this. And this unit outperformed expectations and has clearly shown that they are going above and beyond. And it also shows that if you have a designated unit, that their only goal is to go out and arrest bad guys dealing drugs, that they will find them and they will arrest them. So
Thank you for that comment, Mayor. And along those lines, you know, the quantity of fentanyl as well, 7,566 pills. That's quite a bit, especially when you consider that last year the DEA looked at what they did is they studied fentanyl pills, and they found that out of every 10 pills, 4 were deadly. So that's significant. Taking those pills off the street makes an impact.
A quick comment, if you may.
Councilwoman?
I think the statistics change. I think now 6 out of 10 are deadly on the presentation that we saw, remember? 6 or more. So, but I think focusing a little bit more on treating the addiction and having resources to do so, it's a great way to also help to reduce the amount of drug use. Because I've been surprised now that I get the emails of what happened that day before, of the amount of DUIs and substances abuse that is happening in our town on a regular basis. It's just scary. So I think that is a lot of work that we all have to do as a community to bring awareness and to see the problem as everybody's problem.
Thank you for that comment. If I can just, a quick response, the Prescott Valley Police Department has a long history of partnering with MatForce, which I'm sure everybody here is familiar with as our local and nationally recognized substance reduce abuse coalition. And through that partnership, we have a lot of materials that we do provide to people in those positions, in those situations.
Vice Mayor?
Commander, I want to thank you for all of your work. I know it's real personal for you, and I appreciate everything you've done, and particularly your work with the wind bills and also the new Montenegro bill 2469, which passed out of the House yesterday and is headed to the Senate. And it's my hope that it'll pass the Senate and be signed by the governor, which will be a big win for us after, I don't know, it's been 3 years for me and probably closer to 8 or 7 when you talk to Mayor Lee and yourself. So I just want to tell you thank you very much. And I also wanted to mention the overdose report and how we were only one of 2 counties that had an 80% reduction in youth deaths from 20 to 21, where it went from 5 to 1 in our youth. I like to call it murders. Some of the moms call it poisonings, you know, an 80% reduction. So everything that you guys are doing, everything that PANT's doing, the Narcan, our education with MapForce is all really working. So I appreciate that. And I'm glad you mentioned the partnership with DEA. I was going to ask how our 2 officers were doing with that. I'm really impressed with that. I'm impressed that we have a DEA officer up here and that we had Operation Engage. I've wrote multiple thank you letters to Special Agent Oz. So if there's anything else that I personally can do, you know you can call me anytime. I think Danny and the guys are doing an amazing job. I was in the school on Monday all day talking to a class of civic students talking about the bill. And those kids get it. I just wish our elected officials got it as well as those 7th and 8th graders did. But I'm hopeful because this is the farthest we've ever gotten. So again, thank you very much. And please pass our sincere appreciation on to all of the team.
I will.
Councilwoman?
I so appreciate getting the police blotters on a regular basis. And it always surprises me how often arrests are being made with reference to the drugs as well as a number of deaths. And they don't always say what the deaths are from, but when they're young, you often surmise that it has to do with drugs. And what the police officers have to go through to attend to this, to these traumas that occur in our community. And now, I guess we have this new horse tranquilizer combined with fentanyl that Narcan cannot bring the person back. And I know that there's challenges on a regular basis for you all. And we just pray for you and for your protection and guidance. And thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Sorry. So, Commander, when I was at the testimony for 2469, Sheriff Lamb spoke, and he said that actually DEA is now saying that 75% of the pills that they confiscate are fatal, which means about over 5,000 of those lives have been saved out of that 7566 in Prescott Valley. Over 5,000 lives were saved.
Yeah, just to follow up on that real quick, since Prescott Valley adopted Narcan for our officers very early on, I'm proud to say we were one of the first in the county. We've saved 47 lives. So not just taking the drugs off the street, but being there to treat them with Narcan.
Anything else? Sir, thank you. With that being said, time to adjourn.